Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
Whenever Norm entered the bar Cheers, it was predictable. It was comfortable, and it put a smile on your face.
Afternoon, everybody. How you doing, Norm? What do you know? Had enough.
The setting of this hit 80s and 90s sitcom Cheers was a place where everybody knows your name. They're always glad you came. Don't worry, I'm going to spare you from my horrible singing of the theme song. But what I will share is this. That place, whether it's a local pub to maybe grab a pint or a school gym to play an intramural sport, is more important than you may think. I'm Melanie Ng, and in this episode of The Big Story, we explore the third place. Not home, not work, the other place, the place that you need. Joining me now to discuss is psychotherapist, coach, and consultant Roxanne Francis. Roxanne, thank you so much for joining.
I'm so excited to chat about this, Melanie. Thanks for having me.
And I'm so glad I didn't sing that song. Again, no one needs to hear the singing. Let's talk about this term, which was not coined by me. It was coined by Ray Oldenburg in a book called The Great Good Place. And when he talked about this place, it was defined as somewhere that, again, is not your home space, not that work zone that you go to, but somewhere where you can relax, where you can be yourself, socialize, and let loose. In your experience, what does a space or a place like this really, truly represent?
I feel like it represents a place where you can really let your hair down. You know, when you're at work and when you're at home, there are defined roles for people. There are expectations. We expect you to act in accordance with this. We expect you to produce in accordance with this. We expect you to do these chores. We expect you to show up and, take the garbage out, do the shoveling, make the dinner, make the bed, change the diapers, do the thing. But when you are in, an alternative space or the third space, the third place, it allows you to actually be more of yourself. You can take on a different persona. You can show up without the weight of the expectation. You don't have to show up as the expert that you are at work. You don't have to show up as the partner or the parent as you do in the home. And you can really just hang out and put those pieces down and really just take a deep breath and exhale, right?
I like that. You can just be you. You can just be you. What's interesting is that there really seems to have been an evolution over the years on what this space or place has become. And I feel like even there's a generational gap to this day. Because if I'm talking to some of my colleagues or friends that might be in their 20s, that third place has almost become the digital space. So social media, we saw the upheaval. So many people were so upset when TikTok was going to potentially be banned in the US, and people are crying in videos because that almost felt like that was where they were them. That's where they could share ideas and let loose. I see so many positives with social media, but do you think perhaps that using that third space social media wise might be a detriment?
Yeah, I do find that there is a bit of a detriment because, social media it's digital, and we have lost the person to person context, whether it's a social media platform or we're texting. Many of us have lost the art of language. Many of us have lost the art of just sitting with each other when we have bad news, when there is silence. Many of us rush to fill it because we're so uncomfortable with that sense of that silence. It seems to linger with people in a very uncomfortable way, and also too, I find that in the digital space, we are often showing up to try to impress or concerned about, we hear so much about the comparison trap. You're scrolling and you start to feel worse and worse about yourself. I'm not like them, or I haven't achieved like them, or I'm not going on vacation like them, or my family doesn't look like theirs. And so we have to be mindful with that. If we're not careful, a place that's kind of like that third place can almost seem that way when you're new to it. When you're new to it, you're still assessing the room, you're still trying to figure out, where do I fit? But when you start to go there on a regular basis and you really start to make friends with people, you start to drop the facade, you really start to show up authentically, and the pressures go away. I feel like in social media spaces, those pressures tend to stay.
Yeah, and I think that there's always some miscommunication or I always think about when I get a text from a friend and I read into it and I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. They put it in all the
Exactly.
caps. Are you mad at
What does
me?
that mean?
Wait a second. You didn't respond to me within the first 2 minutes. Are they ignoring my text? So there's subtext to the texts always.
Yes.
So that can, of course, translate into social media where there are misunderstandings and judgments and people spew things. They're keyboard warriors. If they're angry, they
Yeah.
just go at it. And so it really does create something different. There's something to be said about face to face. But the
Mhm.
question I have, though, is in the recent years, especially with the pandemic, people don't really have these defined places now because we have remote workers too. So a lot of people,
Yeah.
their home space is also their
Your
workspace.
workspace.
They're going down for lunch to be mom, dad, and they come back up, and then all of a sudden, their corporate version of them, right? They put that hat on. So where would the issues be when you don't actually have these clear lines?
I think those blurred lines can create problems. And listen, I'm all about the work from home life. It's a benefit for many people, but we really have to be careful that we start to create some demarcation, right? Whether that's demarcation and boundaries around your time or around creating a buffer or third place for yourself. During the pandemic, I spoke to a lot of people about, having certain rituals or things that you would do to um, indicate the start of your workday or the end of your workday, right? Some people would walk the dog after work, and that going out and coming back would sort of suggest that my workday at home is over. And now I'm walking in as someone who has left work behind, right? I had a friend who, she used to say that she would go to the coffee shop on the way home from work. And when she started working from home, what she would do is when work was over, she would get in the car, she'd go to the coffee shop, she would sit in the parking lot, sip on her hot drink, and then take the 5-minute drive back home. And it just kind of created this buffer, this demarcation, because it can almost make you feel as though you're living at work or you're working at home. And as much as remote work is very helpful for many of us, those blurred lines can really start to cause a problem.
As you're describing the day, I'm thinking about this. All right, so there's the work. Okay, so here I am doing this. I'm a journalist. This. Then I come home, pick up my son. I'm mom, so I'm making dinner. I'm doing all of these things. Well, now I want my own personal space. But guess what, Roxanne? My son has hockey. Okay, so now my time, which would be my time to go get that additional area to be myself and let loose, it bleeds into what my son's spaces are. So I have no choice. And I know a lot of parents can relate if their kids are doing extracurriculars, sports, or whatnot. That time that I would have used now has to go to another space. And so, what do you recommend for people who are just like, I don't have the time to create for myself? I don't have the time to sit at the local coffee shop or whatever.
Mhm.
And their time is, say, that hockey arena or that baseball diamond. How do you or can you build that into a space of your own?
I think that one of the reasons why Cheer was such a hit was because um, it suggested this idealized life. Many of us lead busy lives and we don't always have the time to go hang out at the pub every Wednesday and Thursday night. But if you can create some kind of walking group with a couple of your girlfriends on a Saturday morning, or maybe, I don't know, maybe you go get your nails done together every couple of weeks, right? Or you create a reading club together and you're reading the same book, and every once in a while you might call each other a text, create a text group around that. There's still some ways that we can carve it out. And I think it's really important that we all have responsibilities, whether it's children or parents or whatever it is. It's really easy to get sucked into that. And I think we have to be really intentional about carving out those times and spaces for ourselves, because we can get lost in the shuffle. And then when we get lost in the shuffle, it creates, it sows seeds of despair and depression, anxiety. Is this what my life is all about? I have no more time for myself. I don't know what I like anymore. Who knows what my favorite meal is? I just buy what my kids like. Right. And so our lives get wrapped around what we do for a living, the chores around the home, what we do for our children. And we have to be intentional about doing things for ourselves. And it doesn't have to be every day. It can be 20 minutes on a weekend, right? You can join the gym. That could be your other place. You could be a part of a knitting club, right? Create some kind of activity for yourself so that you don't lose yourself.
I love that. So that you don't lose yourself, because you're right. We do lose a bit of who we are. And I don't want to say lose, but maybe we forget. I think back to, Melanie in her 20s, and I loved playing volleyball. Like, that was my thing. I played in intramural leagues, and then all of a sudden that disappeared because work took over, or again, parenting took over. But I love that you said even creating a walking group or something, because I think a deterrent for many people will be like, going out. So let's use, again, cheers as an example. Going out to the pub or to get a drink, that's expensive in this economy. People don't want to be spending the money. So if you can think of something low cost, even what if you want to give back to your community in some way? Maybe look to volunteer somewhere, because that gives you something.
Exactly.
What is your take on choosing a place for you? Like, how do you know? I mean, it doesn't have to be hard. Like, again, it doesn't have to be like, I'm doing this every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But how often would you recommend having that time, that space to really get that happiness back? How often would be healthy or helpful?
I'm leaning towards, at least once every 2 weeks, right? It gives you something to look forward to. It doesn't take months and months, because what happens when you spend when you wait too long to wait for that thing, if something should happen and you can't go, or if something should happen and it gets canceled, then you have to wait another 4 months, right? So it doesn't make any sense for you to spread it out for that long. If you're waiting for a bit of a reprieve, if you're waiting to exhale, if you're waiting to connect with friends and, remember who you are again, you don't want to wait for too long for that to happen. Because if life goes left, and it often does, right, then you're waiting too long to recapture that.
As you were describing that, I was thinking about, I have different pockets of girlfriends, right? Different rooms that we see each other maybe every few months. But when we sit down at that table, when we meet for that coffee, it is just pew, 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 pew. It doesn't stop to the point, and I know a lot of people can relate. The waiter or the waitress comes to us and says, "Are you ready to order?" And we're like, "We have not even picked up the menu, my friend, but yes, we will take a look." But this really does take me to that place where, it doesn't have to be for this expensive dinner. It doesn't need to be for those things, but to be able to plop in your head and say, I am going to carve out that time, because in carving out that time, that will make me actually a better person in space one and in space two, because I got that third place. What does it do for you when you fill that cup and say, all right, I was myself, I let loose, whether it was working out at the gym, whether it was playing that sport? What does that do in the spillover effect into those other spaces, Roxanne?
Oh, well, you know how they say you have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you, help someone with theirs, or you have to fill your own cup first before you fill others. You can't pour from empty, right? And so what that does, it fills you up. It helps to reduce your stress level, or it helps to create your capacity for resiliency, so that when you are at home and the child drops the glass dish that you got from Aunt Merle 20 years ago, you're not losing your mind, because you've already filled your cup by doing the thing in that other place. You're more patient. You're able to say, it's okay, honey, accidents happen. Let's clean this up. Right? It allows you to have more patience. You have more grace for others. You are much more of a joy to be around. Your heart rate actually goes down. It's easier for you to fall asleep. Things like anxiety and depression are easier to be, kept at bay because you're taking care of yourself in that other space. You're doing things. This is self-care, really. It really is.
In using the pandemic as an example, when we weren't seeing people and weren't having the daily face-to-face interactions, it really changed us. And I think a lot of those effects we still feel greatly today. Would you agree?
I agree. I think we still struggle with the sense of isolation. And, if I might add, the pandemic has, to some point, normalized being on your own for a long period of time, right? Having to sort of be sequestered now that, thankfully the pandemic is over. Some people are slower to warm up. And, we live in North America, and it has, the culture has sort of normalized this individualistic lifestyle. But the truth of the matter is that there's healing in community, right? There's healing in the connection. There's healing in looking out for each other and taking care of one another and checking in and high-fiving and seeing children play in the park. These are things that fill our soul. And the more we pull away from each other and the more we exist on our own, the more we dance with illness, to be honest, and a sense of unwellness.
You know what? So very well said. I'm going to leave it right there. So, moral of the story is go look for those interactions. Go fill those cups because it's going to help you fill the other cups. We're all much better off. Roxanne Francis, thank you so much. So lovely to speak with you.
I'm so glad that you had me. Thank you so much, Melanie.
That was The Big Story. You can send us feedback on this episode or any other episode. You can email us at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. You can find us on the Seeker app or, of course, on all of your favorite podcast players. Remember, you can rate, review, follow, and share. I'm Melanie Ng. Thank you so much for listening.